Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today and welcome to this press conference to present you this afternoon the upcoming EU-Africa Sustainability Dialogue, which will feature the second edition of the CSR in Africa Awards organized by the EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce. My name is Sonia Toro and I'm Director Communication, and I'm also in charge of the Corporate Social Responsibility program at the EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce. And yes, again, today we're going to present you our upcoming project, which have this new dimension, this new event, which is the EU-Africa Sustainability Dialogue, which will have a focus on impact investment. And today I have with me Mr. Sergey Ouattara, President of the EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce, and I have also with me Mrs. Sarah Fisher, Sarah Schaefer. Sarah Schaefer from Mars Incorporated, a company which was awarded, their project was awarded Sustainable Economy. They received the Sustainable Economy Award for the first edition of the CSR Award. And I have also online two key persons for our upcoming event. I have Mr. Paul Sinclair from DMG Events, and Mr. Sinclair is working on the Global African Investment Forum, which will happen in December in London, and which is also a partner event for the upcoming EU-Africa Sustainability Dialogues. And I have from South Africa, Mrs. Kirsten Sims from Woolworth, which is also the company which received the Environment Award from the first edition of our CSR in Africa Awards. So since we are already a little bit late, I will directly start this press conference by inviting Mr. Sergey Ouattara to present the Sustainability Dialogues project and also the second edition of the CSR in Africa Awards. Mr. Ouattara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this press conference. We are very pleased to share some views and information about this program we have initiated in 2013 with the support of the European Commission, and this was initiated during EDD 2013. So to give some information on the project and remind about what it is about. Actually, the CSR in Africa Awards aim at promoting corporate social responsibility in Africa. So that means give visibility to private sector actors in Africa performing and having success stories in terms of economic impact, social or environmental. The idea as well is to raise awareness of entrepreneurs and other companies through those success stories. And finally, encourage inclusiveness, growth, and the private sector commitment to the economic and social development in Africa. So this first edition, following this first edition, we had the Ceremony Awards, which was held 2014 in November. And then we have over 50 expressions of interest. And of those expressions of interest, we had 5 winners that have been decided by an international jury of experts. So among them, we have already mentioned Mars, Woolworth. There is also Kakuzi, which is a company operating in agribusiness in Kenya. We have Newmont Ghana, a mining company in Ghana, and then Coco Pack, a company operating in agro-business in Cote d'Ivoire. So just let me share with you 5 minutes of the award ceremony and some important key message we had during this ceremony. So I will just show you the.
since October 2012, when the EUACC was created, Sergey, Sonia, and the whole team, the network, have been working tirelessly to create a chamber of commerce that could be of value and that could represent the new rise of the African continent that we are all witnessing today.
The EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce launched its CSR in Africa Awards scheme because we were convinced that it's not just the volume of economic activities that determines development, but also how business is done. Something that impacts on the economy, the environment, and the people.
The African Export-Import Bank believes in conducting business in a manner which achieves sustainable growth whilst demonstrating a high degree of social responsibility. We believe that this approach creates a source of competitive advantage for our business.
In your opinion, what's the best way to stimulate private sector in engagement on development issues?
First of all, is to show that private sector has a role to play in development, and indeed, the very important one. It's not government nor bureaucracies that are creating jobs and economic wealth. It is the private actor. But private sector for us is the small farmer, just one self-employee, up to the big company. And we are targeting, as we have done in Europe for many years, small and medium enterprises to link up, to find a value chain for their produce, to find best practices, training, a vocational training opportunity with the European Union companies, because this is a very natural partnership. So we are engaged to provide what we call additionality to their efforts.
Pourquoi vous pensez que la RSE est si importante en Afrique aujourd'hui?
C'est particulièrement important parce que vous savez, l'UNESCO est l'organisation qui est l'organisation mondiale qui promeut l'éducation comme droit fondamental de chaque être humain. Et développer auprès du secteur privé, du monde de l'entreprise, une prise de conscience d'être solidaire, d'être responsable sur le plan social, économique et humain du développement de son pays, c'est formidable. Donc l'UNESCO ne peut que soutenir cette initiative de la Chambre de commerce Afrique-Europe, ici à Bruxelles, parce qu'elle met en valeur, le fait qu'il y a des décideurs, il y a des décideurs qui ont réussi en Afrique, qui réussissent grâce à leur éducation, qu'il n'y a pas simplement des problèmes de fuite de cerveau, mais qu'ils sont aussi conscients de la nécessité de participer à l'effort national ou à l'effort régional pour que les enfants puissent aller à l'école. Vous savez que l'UNESCO est très préoccupée pour que chaque enfant ait droit à avoir accès à l'école, que chaque femme, chaque jeune fille puisse avoir accès à l'éducation. C'est essentiel. Et si on veut véritablement un développement économique. Et là, aujourd'hui, ce soir, ce que nous entendons, c'est la réponse du monde, du secteur privé, pour soutenir cet effort d'éducation. Et nous pensons que c'est véritablement là une des solutions pour faire de l'éducation un accès pour tous et pour toutes les femmes.
So we have launched the second edition of the CSR in Africa Awards, but also we have received during the first edition needs expressed by different stakeholders for knowledge sharing in order to be part and to receive a prize and to be a success story. It's important to share and receive from other companies and have the involvement of different stakeholders, governments, and so on. So we have decided for the second edition to add to the award ceremony a sustainability dialogue, a place where stakeholders could exchange about their experience, where matchmaking can be done, where partnerships can be done to achieve this goal of being responsible as a business. And also we would like this year to focus on impact investment involve investors also at the very early stages and make them aware that it is important that they support this initiative. And that is one of the reasons we have decided to be partner with the Global African Investor Summit. So let me finish by saying that to all medias, we would like to congratulate you because you gave visibility on CSR issues. This led to a raise of awareness on the topic, but we need additional work, additional support to give visibility to success stories and also speak about what is good while speaking to CSR. And I call all partners to join us, to support and to invest in that program. So far, funded and supported at 80% by the Chamber, but we are confident that we will have more and more partners on that program, which is a key program for the African private sector, but for the European private sector as well. Thank you.
So now we will hear more from our partner from the Global African Investment Summit, which I mentioned will happen in December this year. And I would like Mr. Paul Sinclair. Do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you very well, thank you.
Very good. So now the floor is yours.
That's very kind indeed. First of all, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. The Global African Investment Summit is flattered and honoured to be a part of this very unique network, and we share some very similar values with those of the Chamber and just outlined by Mr. Ouattara in his opening speech. The Global African Investment Summit is run by a company called BMGT, or BMG Events, which is a subsidiary of BMGT. We're one of the largest information groups in the UK. I actually head up the Africa division and the summit itself. And as a British Ghanaian, one of the things that I wanted to do was really focus on how we can expedite social and economic growth for Africa as a continent and all of its member states, of course. One of the things that I quickly understood was that to really see considerable growth in the continent, we really need to focus on things like value addition, harnessing the billion people that already live in Africa itself, and also look at ways in which we can develop the African private sector as an engine of growth as well. Reduce the gap between countries' GDP and HDI to ensure that there's more literacy, more opportunity for African people. And what I quickly came to realise with the Global African Investment Summit is we had a platform where we could actually drive foreign direct investment into the continent, whether it be in public sector or private sector projects. So to partner with the Chamber on this dialogue and narrative of sustainability is one that reflects that of the summit, but one that's very close to my heart. And I think now is a time for us all to join together to really drive sustainable growth for Africa, but more importantly, equitable growth. How do Africans themselves across the continent benefit from foreign direct investment? How can government infrastructure be developed to expedite the private sector growth? And that's really what we look at the summit. So we have 5 heads of state. Last year we had 3 heads of state and a prime minister attend the event. This year we have 5 heads of state. We have the head of state of Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana, Malawi, and the prime minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo attending the event. And they will be headlining and driving bankable projects to transaction actually at the event itself. The impressive part about the summit is not so much the plenary session, although that's the key component of the event. It's the roundtable meetings which take place throughout the event and the summit, where project owners from the public and private sector have the opportunity to engage directly in bilateral and multilateral conversations with over $235 billion worth of managed funds, which is an incredible amount of money which will converge at the summit to actually consider deployment into Africa as an emerging market. As a result of the summit, we take investors back to Africa, to various different jurisdictions, depending on where the projects are actually presented from, to go and see the projects firsthand. So our mandate, or mantra, if you like, is not really a talk shop. We shy away from conversation and talk about the old narrative of Africa rising, and we actually get boots on the ground in Africa, investors looking at projects, signing MOUs and deploying funds. We wholeheartedly encourage, which is why we're delighted to be working with the Chamber, investment to support private sector growth, sustainability. We have one of the largest congregations of DFIs, end investors, pension funds, family offices, venture capitalists, all converging at the event to look at the very topic of impact investing, not just looking at how we take percentages of return back out of the market for commercial growth in the UK and Europe and North America, but how we can have a long-lasting, sustainable impact for Africa itself and to stimulate sustainable growth. So that's an overview of our event, and to have the sustainability dialogue and the wonderful work of the Chamber and Ms. Toro and Mr. Ouattara championing this topic throughout our summit is an honour, and we welcome the Chamber as a part of the event. We'll be looking to work over the coming months and long term on how we develop this and ensure that we make a long-lasting impact for the continent.
Thank you very much, Paul.
It's only my pleasure.
So talking about the format of this press conference, so now we are going to the second part of the press conference. So we presented the Sustainability Dialogue and also the partner event in London. So now we're going to hear from best practices, I must say, and from the winners of last year. And we will start now by Mars, and also follow up by Woolworth. But before that, I would like to tell you that after the different presentation, we're going to have a Q&A session. So be prepared with your questions. And yeah, so we have now the second part, and I will, ask Mrs. Fischer from Mars to start.
That's okay.
Schiffer. Sorry.
Yes, so thank you very much. And I've got some slides, not to sort of keep you all fixed at them, but I think it might just help with the flow. So don't sort of study them too much, but it just gives you a little bit of visual help. Now, we're hugely thrilled to be here. We were hugely thrilled to get the Sustainable Economy Award for our Vision for Change program in Côte d'Ivoire last year, and really sort of showing what's possible to do in our supply chain. Now, you just spoke about best practice. Now, I would also welcome your language of a sustainability dialogue, because I think that we are starting to have some good programs and some great learnings and some great innovations and trying to get to scale. But I think we certainly don't have all the answers. So I love talking about partnerships and matchmakings, because if there's any advice how we can get to any institutions to sort of accelerate the journey for the entire cocoa industry and not just for Mars, that would be one of the great outcomes for today. So do I just go down here? So just so this is just to to take a step back about Mars, which you may know. Mars chocolate, obviously we make some of the most popular chocolate brands in the world, but this is just really to understand why we're here and what the link is. If you look at the cocoa growing regions in the world, you can see they're all really around the equator, and as we look at the cocoa production over the last century, you see that West Africa is really the region where most of the world's cocoa comes from. There are other areas as well. We've got a big program in Indonesia, but it is very, very clear that the huge interest for countries like companies like Mars in West Africa is hugely driven by cocoa demand. The issue that, of course, we have is that while, you know, cocoa is a massive source of income, that the average farmer, smallholder farmer in Côte d'Ivoire probably has between 2 and 5 hectares, has probably quite old trees, below soil fertility, and faces huge productivity issues. So we want to create, you know, a thriving sector in an area where you have farmers that are not very well educated and are dealing with very, very small farms and have got, you know, very, very small amount of land to really increase the yield. So as a result, you can see that companies like Mars, for us, cocoa sustainability is not just a nice to have, and it's because we're a principle-based company, because it's the right thing to do, but it's also fundamental for the future of cocoa supply for the world. And this is sort of, as you can see here, that really sort of brings it home. Is, you know, these are obviously estimates, so you have to sort of, you know, be careful with the numbers. But if we sort of estimate how much cocoa is needed in the next 5 years, there is a huge discrepancy between the cocoa that's actually produced in West Africa at the moment and what's needed. So this is really sort of the background where we're operating and where a company like Mars comes in. And as I said, this is not just Mars, but it's the entire cocoa sector. But this is really where we wanted to take the leadership when it comes to cocoa sustainability, because you have the economic issues, is that you have, you know, lack of access to fertilizers, you have poverty-related issues, you have social issues in terms of illiteracy, about lack of education available, and also environmental issues. As I said, soil quality, low yield, low productivity, you know, deforestation being a driver. All of these are really sort of feeding into a circle of decline that, you know, is a huge issue facing West Africa, Côte d'Ivoire, but also the cocoa sector. So this is, as I said, the other sort of major consequence, as you can imagine, is that it is not probably the most attractive option at the moment to become a cocoa farmer. So where does the next generation of cocoa farmers come from, and how do you persuade them not to move to the cities, but actually to stay in the farms and to show them that this is actually an activity and you know, where income can be guaranteed in the future. So for us, really, where we then started 5 years ago with Vision for Change, which was a sort of demonstration project, which basically, you know, really worked with farmers to explain productivity, to explain how you work with, you know, how you increase yields, how you use fertilizers, and also work in communities to make sure that women are empowered, that you have the thriving communities that really create the type of environment where you do have the next generation of cocoa farmers. Now, as I said, none of it is easy, and none of it we can do on our own. And none of it is box tick, we're done, we've got an award, now let's move on. It's a journey, and we're learning. And I think where we're really getting to is scale. What we announced on Monday is a big program on gender empowerment specifically, of really seeing gender as a drive against income, and really seeing, okay, what in terms of social and economic empowerment, in terms of access to microfinance, in terms of, you know, training women farmers specifically, can we do to really make sure that that we lift these farmers into prosperity and have the cocoa supply and secure the future supply chain that we need. So as I said, we hope we're leading the way. We're driven by our principles. I hope that some of the program that and some of the initiatives that we've set up, there's a big sort of industry coalition called Cocoa Action, and with the industry we're working together. With the government, we signed a big MOU, to your point earlier, with the Ivorian government, and really hope as we all move together we can achieve the right result. So as I said, these are the initial successes. We've also relied on certification, but as I said, you know, in 2014, 35% of our cocoa was we purchased as certified. I think that our really big goal now is to scale up our efforts to reach as many farmers as possible, and to continue to learn the right lessons. But it is also great to hear that we were recognized for the work that we've been doing. But I think it's a journey, and we very much realize there's a lot of work to do.
We're going to hear from the textile industry, from Woolworth. Kirsten, are you still here?
Yep, I'm here.
Very good. So now we're going to hear Kirsten from South Africa, from Woolworth, to present also where they are for the moment on the project which won the Environment Award. Kirsten, please, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sonia. I think first to say thank you very much for inviting us to speak here today. It's very exciting to be part of this process, and we're very proud to have won the award and to be able to align ourselves with the great work that the EUACC is doing to promote good sustainability practices among African businesses, and to be involved in the sustainability dialogue that you're starting. Just to maybe fill you in on a bit about Woolworths and where we've come from. We actually, as well as textiles, we are a food and general merchandise retailer. We started operations in Cape Town in 1931, and we've since spread throughout Africa, and now recently fully acquired our Australian Country Road Group and David Jones department stores. So we really are now having a true Southern Hemisphere spread. I'd say as a company, our mission is to not only understand our customers, but also to lead them on the journey, provide quality excellence, and understand our product, services, and the environment that we live in. From an environmental perspective, this means leading the way in terms of addressing sustainability in our value chain, and we look at that from field to shelf and post-consumer use. And from a social perspective, we really strive to contribute meaningfully towards our national development priorities, specifically education, development transformation, and contributing towards small and medium business enterprise development. Sustainability is one of our core values, and it is entrenched in our business from the boardroom to people working in our stores. And we launched the strategy around it in 2007, and we termed it our Good Business Journey. And we particularly like to focus on the word journey at Woolworths, because that's what it has been, and that's what it will continue to be. And through the GBJ, as we call it, we've set in place quite a wide number of public commitments around the environmental issues that really are material to our business and across our value chain. And they're broadly categorized in terms of water, waste, energy, sustainable farming, transformation, social development, health and wellness, and ethical sourcing. We've got about 200 indicators around these focus areas, and track them twice a year through a use of a scorecard system, which entrenches the commitments and indicators throughout the entire business. And we evaluate our strategy twice a year with our board committee. So as a foods and clothing retailer, I think the value that we recognize that we have, and that the position we're in, is that we're fortunate to be able to influence both upstream and downstream players in our value chain. On the upstream side, in terms of our produce sourcing, we recognized a few years ago, or 6 years ago, that many of our impacts are related to the growing of our produce. 90% of our produce being grown locally within South Africa and bordering countries. So in terms of our energy, water, soil degradation, type of impacts, this is where we focus on making the biggest difference, and we set up a program called Farming for the Future. And the program really focuses on putting our primary producers onto a program of incremental improvement and working with them to develop needs-based and case-by-case progress improvement programs to really improve their efficiency in terms of pesticide use, fertilizers, water efficiency, and utilizing soil conservation techniques. So as I said, now in our year of operation, we've got 98% of our primary producers working with us on this program, and we're seeing quite positive, well, very positive impacts at the farm level in terms of wildlife returning, better efficiency, water usage, and we're actually seeing that the farmers are viewing the benefits of the program and are willing to convert to more sustainable farming practices as a result of this. So at the other side, at the downstream side of the customers, we do try through extensive marketing and communications as well to continuously engage our customers on sustainability issues, whilst also taking the cues from them in terms of what issues are most meaningful in their lives. And an area that's been a priority for us over recent years is really looking at post-consumer waste and reducing waste in the home. We've primarily done this through looking at packaging improvements, such as lightweighting, and improving product design for ease of separation, and also increasing the use of recycled materials in packaging. We also, hand in hand, have developed a comprehensive labeling system for recyclability, which is a developing industry in South Africa. In 2014, just to give you an example of the progress we've seen on this side of things, in 2014 we downsized our packaging by 514,000 kgs, so resulting in multiple benefits really across more efficient transportation, increased cost savings, and then obviously reduced raw material. So although the recycling in South Africa remains largely underdeveloped in comparison to Europe and America, we are contributing towards driving an industry which supports now 40,000 jobs indirectly and directly. And we're seeing quite considerable investment now in processing and treatment capacity for recyclable materials at a national scale, driven by the drive to use recycled content in packaging and plastic bags. So in addition to supporting these numerous small-scale suppliers, we also focus on managing our value chain through contributing to a sustainable economy. We've been looking to intensify support for small businesses from previously disadvantaged backgrounds through the implementation of a preferential procurement strategy.
Hello, Kirsten. Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Sometimes the line is not very good. What we're going to do now, because we are almost at the moment to have the Q&A session, so maybe you'll have the opportunity to give more details about the program in replying to the different questions that we have. I have maybe one question for Mars and Woolworth to start with this Q&A session. Just for me to know, with these different projects that you have, do you work in partnership with other organizations like NGOs? Is it something that you'd like to do? Just a question as a start, and then I will open the floor to the audience for questions.
Yes, so, absolutely, and I think I was trying to say that with a matchmaking. I think the really important point is that I'm very proud to work for Mars. I think we're a principle-led company. We're trying to do the right thing, but I don't think on our own we have any of the answers. So I think what it needs, if we want to build a sustainable cocoa supply and have the next generation of cocoa farmers in West Africa, I think it is industry, NGOs, donor governments, and governments as a whole to sort of work together, ideally against the right KPIs. And as I said, there is a sort of umbrella industry group emerging, which also involves the traders, called Cocoa Action, that exactly tries to do that, because I think many companies for many years have invested a lot of money and have been very well-meaning, but especially in the social sphere perhaps haven't been as successful. So I think absolutely the answer is let's do this matchmaking sustainability dialogue. I think that's it's a really nice way of putting it.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Yeah, I would definitely mirror that. I think so much value can be had in engaging with NGOs specifically. From our side, we have formally developed a relationship or a partnership, should I say, with WWF, and we engage with them over a range of topics such as sustainable fishing, farming, life cycle assessments for various products, and the value for us is that we contributing to research which other retail organizations can be involved in. So we're actually sort of spanning the middle ground between research and the commercial space. So it's extremely valuable for us to be able to partner with NGOs.
Thank you very much. So now it's the time for questions from the audience. And if you have also questions for Paul Sinclair in London, feel free.
My name is Robert Beckloff. I work for DuniaNet. I used to work for UNEP, and in that context, I have come across this notion by my Nigerian colleagues that in the cocoa industry, what we Northerners see as child labor is actually somewhat also a cultural phenomenon that has very long-standing traditions, and yet there is the ILO convention that seems to be a bit of a difficult situation whereby the way children or youth are involved at certain times in harvest activities don't go well with definitions of credible institutions. So what's your take on that?
I think that you're right, that there is one should never underestimate cultural sensitivities. I think what companies like Mars and others talk about really in this area is the worst forms of child labor. And what this really is linked to is that children do not go to school because they work on cocoa farms. And that is different from every once in a while perhaps doing a bit of harvesting, or you know what I mean? So I think that's the crucial issue. We can all have a long discussion, and we can do this offline afterwards about the methodology one wants to use. But I think if children don't go to school and don't get the education that they should do because they're working, then I think we can all agree that that's unacceptable.
That's perfectly agreeable, but what was interesting, and this was again my African perspective, and this is from a human rights background also, that these people, and they said, well, very difficult, who calls the shots, who defines where that limit is? Of course, the worst cases also they don't want, but that's at least something that is obviously not quite so. I mean, at least there can be some debate on how is it actually handled, how can it be done so in a way that it works both for those families as well as for a large company, for example, who is having to represent this to a Western audience, so to speak, in terms of CSR communication. I find that interesting.
It's what I can personally say, because actually I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, and so
that was the reference country she mentioned.
Exactly,
yes.
Yeah. So I understand a little bit, the context. And one thing which I recently came from Abidjan, I came actually yesterday from the African Development Bank annual meeting. And one thing which really surprised me in Abidjan, and it was the first time that I see that, it was a big advertisement against child labor. So that's where I think the connection with the government and the partnership, as for example we have for Mars, I think, is very key. That's where the private sector can have an impact on government kind of policies, because this was very, at least for me, it was the first time to see the government having a kind of awareness campaign on critical issues such as. So maybe this is one part of the answer on your concern. Or if you have any other specific question, does it answer?
Very, very well. And I just wanted to mention in this context, just on terms of differentiation needs in the child labor discussion, the demonstrations of youth in Latin America I believe it was Guatemala, was it? That went to the street and said, we need to work. It's the only way we can sustain ourselves. Child labor laws are actually affecting our livelihood. So it is not an easy question. And Côte d'Ivoire is a perfect example where maybe in the cocoa industry there needs to be a process that involves local stakeholders, give them a voice in vis-a-vis the one-fits-all solution of the ILO.
Yeah. And that's where the partnership issue is very, very important. Thank you very much, sir. Another question from the audience? Yes, madam?
Yeah, thank you. Rita Weidinger, GIZ Cashew Initiative. Sorry I'm late, but I would like to ask one question about how the discussion about corporate social responsibility versus mainstream business is held in your companies. I know a bit better about Mars, so I'm very curious about Woolworth. Where is the process? Is it a separate entity you are dealing with, and you have the privilege and challenge to convince your colleagues about it? Or is it a mainstream activity going through the whole company? And where do you think what were the arguments to make it mainstream? Thank you.
Our sustainability strategy is mainstreamed in the business. It's one of our 6 key core business strategies, and it was a commitment. I mean, 2007 we started the process, but our work in the field had started long before that. But really, it came from the board recognizing the criticality of having sustainability entrenched in the business, not only for risk management, but also as a requirement from our shareholders and our customers. The key mechanisms we use really is the scorecard indicator process. We set really meaningful targets that we commit to, and and also setting a strategy that's going to be executable, because a lot of strategies fail. You can have a great strategy, doesn't mean it's going to actually make a difference. So we're very, very careful in the beginning phases to set a clear and responsible strategy. Does that answer the question?
Question to Ms. Schäfer from Mars. Our analysis of the situation in Côte d'Ivoire is that there are numerous platforms on cacao, corporations, initiatives, etc. And in fact, we even think that it's now about time also to really look at other crops and crop value chains. So I'm wondering, based on the intensive platforms, initiatives right now, what, according to your understanding, is missing? I mean, you had this call for more partnerships, closer cooperation. I mean, already having established a very impressive network, I mean, what would you like to see happen to make things even more effective?
What I would say is that Cocoa Action, which is this sort of industry umbrella group that I just described, which, the whole goal is to drive to scale, which ultimately is how you have impact going back. I think all of us have great examples about having great initiatives, but ultimately we want to drive to scale. So that's meaningful and that has impact. And that's what really sustainability should be about. And I think Cocoa Action was formed last year with that goal. I think the biggest point and the biggest potential opportunity of Cocoa Action is that it's not that we all now, Nestle and Mondelez and Cargill and Mars have the same programs, but that we have the same KPIs. That in the end we can show that we're driving against the same sort of, the same outcomes or the same impacts. And as I said, at the moment where we are is that the sort of what they call the productivity pillar, i.e. farmer training, grafting, the access to fertilizer, that type of sort of systematic change is being really adopted across the industry, and we're all trying to sort of take the same approach to really make sure that we reach the maximum amount of farmers both in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. I think on the community side, and I don't want to sound like the two are separate pillars, because ultimately it's about a sustainable cocoa supply. But just when it comes to community, I think, you know, when it comes to gender empowerment, when it comes to the empowerment of communities, the data we're still working at and the baselines are being established. But ultimately, again, the only way that any of us are going to be successful is for Cocoa Action to be a success. So yes, there is an existing platform. It's a year old. So I think let's see where we are in a couple of years to see what else is needed. But obviously the dialogue with the Ivorian government, so Cocoa Action is obviously a sort of organization which is supported by the World Cocoa Foundation. Any dialogue with the Ghanaian or Ivorian government is led through them. It's not any individual company that leads that. It's a joint effort. And I think ultimately that should be the same, should be true for donor governments and NGOs. But as I said, the proof is in the pudding. But for now, where we are in as you know, a difficult environment, I think there is a sense of momentum and optimism.
Thank you very much. Before going to the second round of questions, so I will take three other questions. I have one question for the audience. So maybe this will help you a little bit, you know, give you more maybe question to ask. Which player do you think is less prominent in framing and guiding the CSR agenda in Africa? I repeat the question. Which player is, according to you, less prominent in framing and guiding the CSR agenda in Africa? I gave you 4 answers. And please raise your hand if you think this is this player. Government. Do you think that government is less prominent in framing and guiding the CSR agenda in Africa? Academia, foreign aid, or business? Now I will go one by one, and please have an opinion on this. Government? Nobody? Okay. You think? Very good. Okay. Thank you. Academia, less prominent in framing and guiding the CSR agenda in Africa. Very good. Foreign aid. Okay. Business. I have few people without any opinion on this. But it's foreign aid. The stakeholder which is less prominent in framing and guiding the CSR agenda in Africa. I have another question, a last one, before the second round of questions. What are the 2 issues identified as particularly difficult to make progress with in terms of CSR? What are the 2 issues identified as particularly difficult to make progress with in Africa in terms of CSR? Health and education, corruption and environment protection, job creation and education, or human rights and environment protection? I repeat now, step by step. Health and education. Do you think it's the 2 issues identified as particularly difficult to make progress with in Africa? Or corruption and education, environment protection, corruption and environment protection? Okay. Job creation and education, human rights and environment protection. It was corruption and environment protection, the 2 issues.
Who generated the data?
Pardon me?
Who generated the data? I mean, who is the source of the data?
The source of this is the woman, GIZ. It's a report. It's a report. It comes from a report from GIZ. So now it's the time for last round of questions from the audience. I will take maximum 3 questions. If you have questions from... I will have one for Paul.
Just to check he's still there.
Yes. How do you think that we can, or what can we concretely do for your opinion, to push further this issue of impact investment. I really liked what you mentioned when you said that after the conference, you bring investors, on site to see the development of the different projects and so on. But according to you, what can be done concretely to push really further this issue on impact investment?
Yeah, I think there's some investors, particularly from the family offices, that are looking at things like triple bottom line. I think the most important thing that we can do, and it's something I do a lot, is when we travel with governments, to see governments participating in the event, it's to really go through their compendium of projects or speak to their investment agency to ensure that we're selecting the projects that will have a maximum impact locally in each of the different jurisdictions for the investors internationally. So from what we can do as an event or as a summit is make sure that we're not promoting aspirational projects which might have a negative impact across the continent. We're really looking to drive those projects that will have an impact on value addition, so as I say, the processing elements to ensure that things are manufactured locally, that create workforce development, so people are employed and they're contributing back into the social fabric of the economy that we're looking to promote. So I think as a group, we have a responsibility to carefully select those projects that will have maximum impact. And I think the other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have an array of investors, not just the investment banks, which are very important to the growth of the continent, but how can we really get the involvement of these family offices that are looking to do more philanthropic investment and impact investment into the private sector? And it's supporting those private sector individuals with that dialogue and that connection and access to the end investors across Europe and particularly London, as the event is based in London, to ensure that the private sector is developed in a responsible and sustainable manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions before the end of this session? Yes, sir?
I work for an EU-funded trade promotional program, and I definitely assume that CSR is definitely not on the agenda of many of development partners. I would say, is there anything on private sector perspective that development partners, donors can actually do? I work in a program that should actually promote private sector development. I do think that the link between private sector and development as it is seen by donors is something. It's a vague somewhere where nobody knows what to do. Is there something that we as a donor can do actually for private companies, or in the end there is not much of that type of need, and in those type of projects private companies prefer to go by themselves?
Very good question. Thank you.
Just a word, but I think the first thing you are already doing is attending this press conference. But basically it's support this kind of initiative, because actually we have several stakeholders in Africa. Of course, all of them cannot come here, cannot travel. So the idea also is be in the field and give them this opportunity to share, and this share knowledge, learn from their peers. Sometimes they receive support in capacity building from experts, from consultants coming from Europe or from elsewhere. But sometimes from their peers, they need support. They know the local context. And I think this is a way that donors or development agency can really have an impact, is supporting also interconnection, knowledge transfer between private sector actors in Africa. We have some difference, for example, between English-speaking countries and French-speaking countries. Already at this stage, we can do something. So this is one thing I can say.
If I understand correctly, to support these kind of initiatives like the sustainability dialogues, to encourage knowledge transfer, from what I understood from Mr. Ouattara. Any other question, or does it answer your question?
Well, can we actually directly work with private sector?
Yes, Sarah.
So it's interesting because I have, in my previous role, I worked very closely on deforestation, and I also have got a government background. And one thing that struck me, and is more of a general observation, is that I think where NGOs and business have made a lot of progress in understanding how to collaborate, speaking each other's language. My experience certainly, and I can't speak as much about, you know, Côte d'Ivoire, but certainly when it comes to deforestation in Indonesia, when I look at development agencies and donor governments there, is sometimes I think there's still an element of just not having the same objectives and being misaligned, and maybe it just taking time to sort of start speaking the same language. So that would be an observation for me, that it might be for us just to go to the same events and start understanding that actually we all want the same thing. We're just, you know, coming from it from different angles. So.
Actually, I wanted to share, as part of a multi-stakeholder project, I think the learning within such projects where private and donors or development partners are part in a board, in decision-making functions, this is the learning which really helps us to progress there. So not one being in a recipient function and the other one the decisive one. As I have seen in many public-private partnerships, one-on-one, an agency gives the money and the private sector implements, or vice versa, but really sitting and cracking the minds on a joint program on a development, with a development agenda. And it's not an easy journey, I must say. I'm facilitating it because I'm virtually representing all the parties in that initiative. But I think the learning is a great one. And when I ask all the partners in the project what's most important for them, is the growing understanding of a different perspective. So not just learning a buzzword of the others, but really understanding what's behind. And not judging what's better one, because we need both sides. But it's really a learning journey, and I must say, for me, a very valid one, not an easy one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any last question before we close the press conference? So thank you very much for your time and for attending this press conference. And I would like to end this session by inviting you all for in December for the EU-Africa Sustainability Dialogue, which will be also held in partnership with the Global African Investment Summit in London. So 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of December in London. And yes, you are very much welcome to keep in touch with the EU-Africa Chamber of Commerce if you'd like to have more information. And maybe one last and important element is that the second edition, the applications are open for the second edition of the CSR in Africa Awards, and the deadline for submission of the projects is 30th of September this year. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Kirsten and Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. Thank you.